Coming up on the Whitney Reynolds Show, we're talking women in sports. From Title IX, challenges, and victories, we're covering all sides of the field. Stay tuned. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Out of Darkness Chicagoland Community Walk, walking to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education. Close your eyes, and I want you to picture a football player. I think if most of us were honest, the picture that came to mind was not a woman. Women in sports have been facing these types of challenges for years, and that's today's topic. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Our first guest is quarterback Sami Grisafe. She is an all-star athlete. She earned the World Championship MVP title and was named to the World All-Star team as quarterback for Team USA. Sami threw the first touchdown ever in women's international tackle football competition back in 2010. Welcome to the show, Sami.
Thank you.
So tell us, when people picture football, they think maybe of pro teams or, high school football. Did you play in high school?
I did play in high school in California. I was the first girl in California to play quarterback in a varsity Division I game.
What was that like?
It was amazing. It was a challenge. I played youth ball from when I was 10 to 14.
With all guys?
With all guys. And then it was a dream of mine to play high school ball. And my school in Redlands was very traditional, had football there for over 100 years. And so it was kind of a big to-do in Redlands that I was going to try out. And the boys, since I'd grown up playing with them, were very supportive. It was the coaching staff I had to win over, but eventually I did.
Obviously you did. You became the quarterback.
I did.
So when you were playing, you said the town was very supportive. There's all sorts of sports for women, but football is not one that people tend to think of for women. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's been part of the good old boys club for a long time, and I think a lot of it is because there's been this misconception that women aren't as rough and tumble as the guys are in a lot of ways, and I would assume that that's probably the reason that it's remained primarily a men's sport for so long. But I found out recently there was a team in the 1970s. There was actually a league in the 1970s of women that played, and Toledo Troopers were one of them. They were the most winningest football team in all of football history in general. They just,
really?
They were an amazing team. I think 10 perfect seasons they had, something like that. So it's existed, it just hasn't been in the public eye as much as it has been now, which is really exciting.
Right, so when you were growing up, the boys supported you on the team. Mm-hmm. What did your parents, did they say, no, honey, go practice this? Did your parents support you?
My mom, they were very supportive. It took a little bit of, begging is what it took a little bit of. I had to beg my mom. I was already playing boys baseball, and she was like, that's exactly what she said. You're already playing baseball with the boys. Why do you have to do this too? And after I literally got on my knees and begged her, she called the president of the Junior All-American Football Association. And he said, if she doesn't like the hitting, after 2 weeks, we'll give you a full refund. And I just loved it more. So I know she was crossing her fingers, but I think she's happy now that it ended up the way it did.
After high school, then you kept pursuing your football career.
I did. I took a little bit of time off. I had a scholarship offered to Chicago College of Performing Arts, which is what brought me to Chicago. And then I found out from our theater manager that there was a women's professional team in Chicago, and he bet me that, he said, I know you played in high school, but these girls look like they mean business. And so I said, okay, I'll bet you that I'll be the starting quarterback, in a little bit of time. So I went and tried out, and eventually, the rest is history. But
what do you think sports has taught you?
Oh, geez. Sports has taught me a lot of things. Football has taught me how to be a leader, how to work with a group of people that you don't necessarily have a lot of things in common with, but you can find those commonalities. It's taught me how to be cool under pressure. That was a lesson that was really difficult to learn, and I still struggled with it, in my final years, but it was something that I eventually got better with. It's taught me a lot of things, but mostly I would say it's taught me how to work with a group of people for a common goal, which I think life brings up for you a lot.
So with women in sports, women sometimes we want to watch our weight, we don't want to talk about our weight, but if you're playing football, you have to bulk up, right?
Yeah, yes, you do. And there's a lot of sports like that. I think the important thing for women and for athletes of all kinds, because men have, image issues as well, I think is just to be happy with whoever you are and what you're doing, feel good about what you're doing and not what you necessarily, how you measure up to society standards of what you should look like. I think that's really important for everybody, not just athletes, but be happy with what you're doing with your body and feeling healthy and not necessarily what size you are and what weight you are.
What advice would you give to young girls looking at getting into a sport and kind of undecided on what sport they should do, or maybe they're thinking outside the box like you did?
I would say whatever sport you decide that that you're passionate about or you think you want to try, to give it 100% and keep an open mind and don't give up before the season's over. My parents had a rule that we could try whatever we wanted to try, but we had to finish out the season. There was no quitting mid-season. So I think that was actually a really important rule, because sometimes when things get difficult, especially when you're young, you think, oh, maybe I don't like this as much, because once you hit adversity, it's like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. But it's really important, because that's where success comes after adversity, and that's the only way you're going to find it. So I think it's an important lesson to learn.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. You're not playing football anymore. You are a football player turned singer. Tell us real quick where people can find you.
Yeah, you can find me on www.samigrisafe.com. That's SAMIGRISAFE. And you can Google me. I'm all over the internet.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's now time for the Social Sizzle, and we couldn't think of anyone better for this segment than the ladies from A League of Their Own. Now, in this popular movie, they were playing roles of women on the baseball field that were filling in while the men were off to war. Let's take a look.
We are here at Wrigley with the actresses from A League of Their Own. And I tell you, girls, I posted about this on Facebook and Twitter, and everyone was so excited. Because you changed the way people look at women in sports. And that's what this show is all about today. And so we want to find out what it's like portraying women that were kind of filling men's shoes. So I'm going to pass it to you first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Megan Kavanaugh. I'm Marla Hooch. I played second base. Okay, so we are so honored to have been able to show the story of the women, of the real players that played from 1943 to 1954. And it is just a freaking honor to be here. I'm a Chicago fan. I'm from Chicago. I can't believe I'm here. I'm standing on Wrigley Field again since 23 years ago when we were here. So, but yes, it's just an amazing, amazing experience to have been able to do that. Thank you.
So was there anything that you learned in the process of making the movie, like camaraderie? Camaraderie? Yeah, tell me about it.
Go ahead. Oh, well, we were together 24/7.
Yes, 24/7. And we decided to pool our money and rent a big house. That was awesome. So then we all went home with Nike bags full of cash because we just rented a house together instead. No, you don't have to teach us about camaraderie. We love each other, and we had a great time making fun of her broken nose, her concussion, your concussion. She had both. And I had been playing baseball since I was a little kid, so I just got hit in the head a lot. That was about it.
I love it. So with the aspect of being a team, women in sports, we're highlighting all sorts of women on this show today. What would you say your biggest thing? What is your biggest thing you learned whenever you were being a woman in sports?
I think all of us can agree on is trying to get the story of the actual women accurate. And paying homage to him and making them proud of us, you know, and doing it right for them. I mean, that's what resonated the most for me, Whitney. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they were the heroes. We were lucky to play them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And God bless Penny Marshall for making this film and getting the story out. And I feel like I rode their coattails, you know? I'm lucky, man. I'm lucky to be here. Who gets to be here? And do this with you. It's just a phenomenal life. It's been very great.
I'd like to also say that I was impressed with the women, with the equipment they had. They're wearing skirts, sliding in skirts. That was a real bruise on Renee Coleman's leg from playing. Really? So Penny shot it. And the gloves that they had to use, you had to move your feet because you can't just scoop up with those gloves. I mean, when we got them, we were bruised. You know, we had to wear padding in them. So I was impressed by, you know, the equipment that these women had to use, and they're the real deal.
Our next guest is Sedun, who's been in sports her whole life. She started rowing in 8th grade for Oregon Rowing Unlimited. In 2005, she represented the USA on the junior national team. She went on to attend the University of Notre Dame and graduated with 4 gold medals for the Big East Conference Championship. She has continued to row, but these days through her students. She joins us now with more. Welcome to the show, Sedun.
Thanks for having me.
So you have been in sports forever.
It feels like it, yeah.
So tell me how you got started. Whenever you were young, did you always know that you wanted to row, or did you dabble in a couple different sports?
Oh, no, I didn't know I wanted to row at all, actually. When I was little in elementary school, I was a competitive swimmer year-round. And then when the '96 Olympics came on, I made a joke about trying out the sport. And this was the summer before 8th grade. And the next thing I knew, my mom had signed me up for it. And it went from there.
What do you think sports has taught you over your lifetime?
Sports has essentially taught me everything about who I am today. So it taught me discipline and commitment and goal setting and accomplishment. And it also, with myself, it taught me that I can do anything and that I can be resilient.
So you are now like a mentor and a coach for young girls that are rowing. Mm-hmm. So that perspective on it, like having been in sports, what is your perspective now with being able to mentor and coach young girls? I mean,
after I was graduating from college, if I wanted to stay involved in rowing, I had 2 paths I could have taken. So one, I could have continued my own personal rowing career, or the other path was to get involved in the coaching side and essentially give back to what had been so great for me. I would say that one of the most influential people in my life was my high school rowing coach. He really, opened a lot of doors for me and helped, make me believe in myself and realize my own potential. So I wanted to give back and start doing that for future generations of rowers.
When you're working with your students, does your team of women get the same as the men's rowing team? Is it pretty equal?
We actually, that's kind of a joke on our particular club, but since we're a co-ed club and it's a student-run organization at Northwestern, we are completely one team and we work together. So everything is equal. And in fact, one of the interesting things about us is that when we go into making decisions with regards to racing or equipment purchasing, we have to factor in the other team because our resources are so limited that we have to make sure that, everybody can be flexible and it can suit everybody's needs, which at some schools, it's definitely not the case.
So having a co-ed team, do you train the team all the same way?
I do not train the men at all.
Okay.
So they have their own men's coach and everything, but we definitely collaborate and work together when it comes to things where we're both involved with racing schedules, choosing races, choosing equipment, like I said, and also trying to make one cohesive team.
But it is a co-ed team. Mm-hmm. Wow, so 2 coaches.
Yeah.
And then combining.
Yeah, there's 4 of us. There's 2 varsity coaches, men and women's, and then a novice men's coach and a novice women's coach. But the varsity coaches like myself, we oversee the younger coaches as well.
So with the students that you're training now, as they're approaching college, do colleges do the same for the women athletes as the men when it comes to rowing?
At Northwestern, it's a club, but at other schools, for instance, Notre Dame, where I went, we were a varsity sport. And there's no varsity men's rowing team there. It's a club. So I had scholarship opportunities. I had all the benefits of being a assigned varsity athlete, and the men do not at that school. Most schools actually, when Title IX became essentially a really big thing in the 70s, institutions started adding rowing teams, women's rowing teams, because it was the only sport where the roster size could balance out football. So there was just an influx of rowing scholarships for women. And when I went into college in 2001, I was kind of ahead of the curve. So I was the first recruited class at Notre Dame, which was pretty cool.
That is awesome. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Title IX a little bit later. But is there any big differences that you've seen in women versus men in the sports?
Well, in rowing, it's actually one of those reverse situations where women's rowing gets way more attention than men's rowing does, which wasn't always the case. And that's actually how the whole Title IX fight came about, because there's a whole story about it. It happened at Yale, but the women said that the men get way better facilities than they did and better treatment. And they brought it, to the administration and said, this isn't fair. So ever since then, I would say actually women's rowing gets way more benefits than men's rowing, but still nothing like football or baseball or anything.
So overall, just like sports-wide, would you say that women are, it's kind of the rules are changing over time? Like it's been women's sports is doing much better?
Oh, definitely.
That's what this show, it's interesting. As we were prepping for the show, so many times, people look at sports differently, and it really depends, because I think women in sports, women are on the rise. I mean, people are paying a lot of attention to it, but just like anything, it can take time, and it takes people getting comfortable. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. And one of the reasons why I have two brothers, and I was the only quote unquote athlete in the family, and it's because my mom wasn't allowed to play competitive sports. So I think she really wanted her daughter to participate in athletics. And again, it was just a generational mindset, that women shouldn't be as competitive or involved in competitive sports. So, just like anything, like the WNBA is still really, struggling to be on the same level as the NBA, in my opinion. So I think outside of the Olympics, where it seems pretty fair, women are still trying to get an equal footing to the men's teams.
What advice would you give to the young girl at home that's thinking about getting into sports?
I would just say absolutely do it. Don't be afraid of it, and give it a try, and keep trying until you find what's best for you. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't.
And would you say, in your own personal life, I know that you already said that it made you the person you are, but if you did not choose to mentor and keep on coaching, do you think there would be a piece of you missing?
Absolutely. And I discovered that about 4 years ago. I coached high school rowing for 6 years right after college, and then I made a deliberate decision to step away for 2 years when I attended Northwestern for graduate school, and I didn't coach then. And it definitely felt like something was missing. And so it was the best thing to get back involved in the sport, and I felt complete again.
See, I love that concept, because as we become adults and we have a lot of different types of viewers out there, people can take even a note from this and maybe re-engage a sport that they did as a child, or mentor or coach that team, because we all need coaches in our life. We all need mentors.
I definitely agree with you. And, and the other thing too is, like you said, there's a definite gap in mentoring and coaching, and I think more people should find the time to get out there and get involved.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's now time for our viewer's voice. Today's question is, do you feel that women athletes are getting the recognition they deserve?
Yeah, I think definitely with the progression of Title IX over the past decades, there's been a lot more recognition of women in sports. But I think as a larger nation, I think more marketing and pushing is usually geared towards men's sports teams and not always women's sports teams. Even though they're incredibly talented, especially here at DePaul. Our women's basketball team is super great, and soccer and softball.
I still don't think so, because I think that male sports are still the most dominant ones that people look at, and people go and buy tickets to see at venues and things like that. But
now it's starting to become more popular, especially with professional sports. They're starting to get a lot more recognition, and even college sports as well now.
It's hard to say. I'm not a big sports fan, but I would say generally I'm more familiar with male sporting events. Just if you look at the newspaper or on TV, you'll mostly just see male sports, so maybe not.
Well, we couldn't have a women in sports show without talking about the elephant in the room, Title IX. Let's take a look at this interview that explains more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you're joining us via Skype from New York. Tell us a little bit about, people, they know you because you're an Olympic skater. Tell us about your skating.
Well, I started skating when I was 3 years old, so now that's a very long time ago. And yeah, I guess I did go to the Olympics, which was very exciting. But skating in my life was a lot more than just winning the Olympics or being able to represent my country, traveling around the world and competing on the world's largest stage. It was all of the lessons that I've learned from practicing every day, from competition, from meeting other people, from becoming friends with my competitors that have really I've carried through with me to my life today.
What was it like whenever Title IX kind of hit? Did it change your world at all?
But as I started to get better and meet more people, and when I became a little more competitive in skating, I would do tutoring sessions with my teachers in high school. And that's when I first really learned that other women didn't have those same opportunities. They didn't have the access to the sport that they wanted to do. They weren't even introduced, and they didn't even think that was an option. Like, they wouldn't think like, oh, maybe I can play softball, or I can play tennis, or I can play soccer, because they didn't have the same opportunities that I had. And so right now I work with the Women's Sports Foundation, and the greatest part of it is trying to ensure that all girls and women across the country have equal access to those same opportunities.
So in case people at home do not know exactly what Title IX is, it's actually, go ahead and explain it, but it affects not only women, but also men.
So it was enacted in 1972, and it was to ensure equal access to all kids in federally funded programming. And a lot of people think that it's just sports, but it's not. It's sports and academics. And the Women's Sports Foundation was started in 1974 by Billie Jean King, who I think now a lot of people still know her from when she played Bobby Riggs in the big Battle of the Sexes tennis match, and she won. So she started this in 1974, and I'm on the board of trustees, and I help them with the direction and the programming and other things related to the foundation. But our main mission is to empower girls and women through sports, and also to protect Title IX and make sure that girls and women do have this same type of access in a lot of places where it's not being followed.
So with that, tell us what's one of the biggest things you've learned that women, like maybe one of the challenges that women in sports are facing.
Well, there are a few challenges for women in sports, and one is the amount of girls who drop out of sports very young because they don't see the option to continue. I think it's the teenage, when they're graduating from middle school, that they don't continue into high school. And some of it's from lack of programming, and some of it's just from lack of opportunity where they can't figure out how to get from school or to the playing field. And their friends aren't doing it, or their parents hadn't done it. I mean, when Title IX was first enacted, I think it was 1 in 27 girls participated in high school sports. 1 in 27. And now it's 2 in 5.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's still, 3 girls out of the 5 that are inactive and aren't playing. And in the latest research that we've done, that's about 4 million girls around the country who aren't participating. So for people who think that it's all done and there's no more work for us to be doing, there's still more.
Always, always, always. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
As we end today's programming highlighting women in sports, I want to say congratulations to Sarah Thomas for becoming the first female official in NFL history. Now quoting Lisa Leslie, an all-star basketball player, Olympic gold medalist, and WNBA League MVP. "I'm strong, I'm tough, and I still wear eyeliner." For more information on today's show, visit WhitneyReynolds.com. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by the Out of Darkness Chicagoland Community Walk, walking to prevent suicide through research, advocacy, prevention, and education.